There are moments in life when you feel completely drained, as if every part of you has been stretched thin. You try to hold yourself together, to preserve what little strength, energy, or hope you have left. And then, just when you are running on empty, life places someone in front of you who needs something from you. Comfort, kindness, help, or simply a small act of compassion. In that moment, a quiet question rises within. How can I give anything when I barely have enough to survive myself? Most people know what it feels like to be tired, overwhelmed, or afraid of losing the little they have. Maybe you've had days where you felt as if your inner well was drying up, emotionally, spiritually, or even financially. On those days, giving seems impossible. It feels like pouring from a cup that's already empty. But what if those moments, when we feel the most lacking, hold a secret about life that we often overlook? What if giving, even from a place of scarcity, reveals something powerful about who we are and what we're capable of? Stay with this story until the end, because it might change the way you see generosity, scarcity, and the unexpected ways life returns kindness to those who dare to offer it. In a dusty village tucked between cracked fields and sunburned hills, a quiet struggle had become a way of life. Months of scorching heat had drained the land of its color, leaving the soil brittle and the rivers nothing more than winding scars across the earth. In this village lived a humble farmer named Eli, an ordinary man with calloused hands, gentle eyes, and a heart shaped by years of hardship. Eli owned a small patch of land and a single old well behind his house. That well had been his lifeline for as long as he could remember. It fed his crops, filled his cup, and kept him alive through countless seasons. But now, even the well had begun to fail him. Each morning, he lowered his wooden bucket into the dark hole with a thread of hope, only to hear it scrape lightly against the shallow surface of what remained. The water was dwindling, and with it, Eli's sense of security. Despite his struggles, Eli had always been known as someone who quietly helped others, sharing seeds with a neighbor, lending a tool, offering a warm meal when he had one to spare. But as the drought grew worse, fear crept into his heart. For the first time, he began to believe that maybe he didn't have anything left to give. The little water at the bottom of his well felt like the last fragile piece of survival he had left. Yet, somewhere deep inside, a longing remained. A longing to stay kind, to stay generous, even when everything around him seemed to encourage the opposite. He wondered what kind of person he would become if scarcity forced him to close his hands. One evening, as the sun sank behind the hills and painted the dry land in shades of fading gold, Eli sensed that life was about to test him in a way he had never expected. As night settled over the village, Eli sat on the worn stone beside his well, listening to the wind scrape across the barren fields. The silence felt heavier than usual, as if the land itself was holding its breath. He was about to head inside when he noticed a shadow swaying unsteadily along the path, slow, fragile, and unfamiliar. A traveler emerged from the darkness, cloaked in dust and exhaustion. His clothes were torn, his lips cracked, and his steps trembled as though each one might be his last. When he reached Eli's yard, he paused, clutching his chest, and whispered with a trembling voice, "Please, water, just a sip." Eli froze. The word water echoed inside him like a warning. His well was almost dry. He didn't know if there would be enough for tomorrow, or even for the morning. The fear he had been carrying for weeks suddenly pressed hard against his chest. He looked at the traveler, at the desperation in his eyes, at the way his body sagged as if surrendering to the earth, and his heart ached. But survival has a strange way of hardening a person, And for a moment, Eli struggled. What if giving this stranger even a little meant losing everything? What if kindness cost him his only chance to make it through the drought? Sensing the conflict in Eli's hesitation, the traveler mustered enough strength to say one more sentence, soft, yet oddly steady. Sometimes, the smallest drop given from an empty well can save more than a life. It can save a heart. The words struck Eli with unexpected force. They felt like a truth he had forgotten, a reminder of the man he wanted to be. Slowly, with trembling hands, he lowered his bucket into the well and drew up what little water remained. Then, without keeping a single drop for himself, he offered it to the stranger. And the traveler drank as if receiving a miracle. That night, Eli lay awake on his thin straw mat, staring at the ceiling as the moonlight traced pale lines across the walls. The image of the traveler drinking the last of his water replayed over and over in his mind. At first, there was a quiet warmth in his chest, a sense of having done the right thing. But as the hours passed, the warmth faded, replaced by a gnawing fear. What have I done? What if there is nothing left in the well tomorrow? What if I cannot survive the week? These questions clung to him like shadows. The drought had taken so much already: his crops, his livestock, his strength, and now he wondered if his act of kindness had taken the final thing he needed to endure. Before dawn broke, unable to bear the uncertainty any longer, Eli rose and walked outside. The air was cool, almost cold, carrying a faint whisper of the coming sunrise. He approached the well with hesitant steps, each one heavy with dread. With a deep breath, he lowered the bucket, listening intently. There was no familiar splash, only the hollow thud of wood hitting dry stone. The well was completely empty. A painful tightness gripped his chest. He sank to his knees beside the well, pressing his palms against the rough stones. For a long moment, he could do nothing but stare into the darkness, feeling a wave of regret wash over him. He had given away the last of what he had, and now there was nothing left. But despair has a strange way of revealing truth. Sitting there, Eli began to realize that his fear didn't come from losing the water. It came from confronting the question he had avoided for so long. Was he only generous when it was easy? Only kind when it cost him nothing? In the silence of early morning, something within him shifted. He stood, wiped his face, and decided to do the only thing he could: try. If the well was dry, he would dig deeper. Maybe it was pointless. Maybe it would change nothing. But surrendering was not the man he wanted to be. He fetched his old iron shovel, its handle worn smooth by years of work. Stepping into the well's stone ring, he began to carve away at the dry earth beneath. At first, the soil crumbled effortlessly, but as hours passed, the ground grew stubborn and dense. Sweat mixed with dust on his skin. His muscles trembled. His breath turned ragged. Still, he dug. He dug through fatigue, through doubt, through the voice inside that whispered, "This is useless." The sun climbed higher, scorching the back of his neck. Blisters formed on his palms, but he kept striking the earth. By midday, he had carved several feet deeper into the ground, though there was still no sign of water. He paused only briefly, leaning against the shovel, chest rising and falling sharply. Exhaustion pressed on him like a weight, but somewhere beneath it, a quiet determination grew. If kindness had stripped him bare, then maybe this struggle was the only path forward. He lifted the shovel again. When the blade hit something harder than soil, Eli frowned. It wasn't stone. It felt smoother, more deliberate. He knelt down and scraped away the dirt with his hands, revealing a rounded surface buried beneath layers of earth. His heart quickened. He dug faster, clearing more and more until finally he uncovered the shape in full, a clay jar sealed with hardened wax. His hands trembled as he lifted it, the old clay cool against his fingertips. With a careful twist, he broke the seal. Inside, glinting in the sunlight, were coins, dozens of them, perhaps hundreds. A forgotten treasure hidden deep below the well, unreachable until the drought had stripped it dry and Eli had dug farther than he ever imagined. He sat there in stunned silence, the weight of the jar resting on his lap. A soft wind blew across the barren land, and for the first time in months, Eli felt something stir within him. Not just relief, not just hope, but understanding. Eli sat at the bottom of the well, the clay jar heavy in his hands, its contents shimmering like captured sunlight. For a long moment, he simply stared at it, unable to fully grasp what he was seeing. The treasure felt unreal, almost misplaced, as if it belonged to another story, someone else's story. Yet here it was, resting in his lap, discovered only because he had dared to dig deeper after giving away the last of what he had. A slow breath escaped him, carrying with it a realization that settled not just in his mind, but deep in his spirit. If the traveler had never come, he would have guarded his few remaining drops of water, living in fear of the empty days ahead. If he had not given away that water, the well would never have fully drained. And if the well had not emptied completely, he would never have found the courage or the need to dig deeper. It struck him then, with quiet clarity. Sometimes, life empties us so we can discover what lies beneath the surface. What he thought was loss had actually been an invitation. What he believed was the end had secretly been the beginning of something hidden, something waiting. He lifted a single coin and held it up to the light filtering down from above. It glimmered with a faint golden hue. But to Eli, the shine wasn't just from metal. It was the reflection of a truth he had forgotten, one that seemed to grow brighter the longer he looked at it. Generosity was not measured by abundance. It was measured by the heart's willingness to give, even when giving felt impossible. He remembered the traveler's words. The smallest drop given from an empty well can save more than a life. It can save a heart. Only now did Eli understand the depth of that message. When he shared his last water, he believed he was helping someone else. In reality, he was saving himself, from fear, from scarcity, from the shrinking of his own spirit. And in giving from his emptiness, he created space for something new to enter. As he climbed out of the well, the jar pressed close to his chest, Eli felt lighter than he had in months. Not because his problems had vanished, but because he had discovered a truth that would guide him long after the drought ended. In life, there will be seasons when you feel drained and uncertain, times when you believe you have nothing left to offer. But often, those moments hold hidden wells beneath the dryness, wells of strength, purpose, and blessing that can only be uncovered when you dare to give, even when you're afraid you have too little. Sometimes, the greatest gifts are found not when your hands are full, but when your heart is open. As Eli stepped away from the well, the morning sun washed over the barren fields, turning the cracked earth into a mosaic of gold and shadow. In his hands, he carried not just a jar of coins, but the quiet confidence that something within him had changed forever. The well, once a symbol of scarcity and fear, now stood as a reminder of how life can surprise us in the most unexpected ways. He paused and looked back at it. The same stones, the same circular frame, but it no longer felt empty. Even if it held no water, it overflowed with meaning. It had become a place where loss transformed into discovery, where fear gave way to hope, and where an act of selflessness opened a hidden door beneath the surface. Eli lifted his gaze to the horizon, feeling a renewed sense of strength. The drought still stretched across the land. The sun would still burn, and challenges would still come. But now he walked with an open heart, knowing that generosity was never a subtraction. It was an invitation, an opening, a deepening. And this truth is not just his. It belongs to anyone who has ever felt empty, tired, or afraid of giving. Sometimes the smallest act, offered from a place of near nothingness, becomes the very seed that grows into transformation. Sometimes the moment you believe you have nothing left is exactly when a deeper well inside you begins to stir. So if you ever find yourself feeling depleted, remember Eli's story. The world does not always reward grand gestures. Often it honors the quiet ones, the ones born from sincerity, compassion, and courage. Even in the driest seasons, you can still be a source of hope. Even from an empty well, kindness can flow. If this story touched something within you, consider sharing it with someone who might be walking through their own season of emptiness. A simple story can sometimes be the reminder they need to keep going, to keep giving, and to keep believing in the quiet goodness that still exists in the world. If you'd like to hear more inspiring stories like this one, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Your support helps these messages reach more hearts that need encouragement. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you in the next story.